of course, Alex Moore-Minott, who is a Mayal priest from Moortown, former Minister of Foreign Affairs for the sovereign state of Akampong, and one who I have heard speak in very, very profound ways. He is a man of wellness at heart and someone rooted in knowledge of our herbs and spiritual practices. So I want to just have us hear from each of our speakers, Gloria Sims, Beverly Carey, Sidney Bartley, and Mayal priest Alex Moore-Minott, in that order. Thank you. Oh, I didn't introduce myself, but I try never to do that. I'm Sonia Stanley Nayo, Director of the Center for Reparation Research and a Senior Lecturer in Cultural Studies here at the University of the West Indies. Over to you, Mayal priest Alex Moore.
Peace and love, everyone. I hope all is well. Thank you for this lovely opportunity. Quite like my elder cousin here, I did not know that I was going to speak here until about half an hour ago. So I have nothing prepared, but when you live a thing, when you eat, sleep, and breathe a thing, you don't really need to prepare. So I'm here to represent the spirituality of my people. And I believe that it is the foundation that everything else that is being discussed here is built on. The spiritual concepts of my people, of our people, are the backbone of the reason why our ancestors fought. The whole reason why they believed in freedom was because freedom was to our ancestors just as important as the 10 Commandments of the Jews. Freedom was that pillar. So just like how Islam has 5 pillars of worship and belief, freedom is one of our pillars of belief and what we believe in. I represent what we know in Jamaica as Mayal. And Mayal is truly the spiritual intersection of all things African and all things Lokona Arawak, the original people of this land. And I think that we must give honor to the first ancestors of this land if we are to go forward. There's a lot of talk about the Africans, and we love and respect them, but we must remember the first people to have walked on this soil, because it was because of them why the Maroons knew the land so well, knew the herbs so well. Our esteemed elder here, I have so much love for her, Bev Carey, she spoke of a piece of oral history. And I think that it is a beautiful representation of who we are as a people. It was an African man married to an indigenous Lokona woman. And she was a scientist, a science woman, a Mayal woman. You know, she did her dance, she did her singing, and she used those modalities to call the spirits. And that's what that story was truly about. And we must realize that it was this Mayal tradition, this spiritual tradition, that did 2 things for us as a people. It tied us together and it tied us to the land. Okay? So, to me, it was Mayal that unified entire Jamaica. And we recognize that the reason why so many different indigenous or spiritual communities have a remembrance of Grande Nanny, for example, is because she was the high priestess. So just as how Chief Kojo was the military man, the military genius, Grande Nanny was the spiritual genius. She was the spiritual head for not just Maroons, but all Jamaicans. This is why today, even in revival circles, where our people were forced to, and I've heard Mama G speak about it a lot, hide our tradition behind Christianity because of oppression, we still have the revival shepherds and leaders, etc., carrying their flocks to Akampong, to Moortown celebration time, because Maroon represented not just resistance with gun and powder and bayonet and sword, but resistance through spirituality. So people said, oh, And no disrespect, Chief, but some people say that Grandy Nanny did not catch the bullets. She did. She did. And if you truly know the Mayal power, the power of our spirituality, it would not come as a surprise. And I know that you have seen great things in Scotts Hall, unexplainable things.
Yes, but my only thing is that a soldier is trained to kill. And if they know that Nanny will catch a bullet here, you're going to shoot it here.
No, we'll talk about that some more. But the unification of us as a people came through the singing, the dancing, through going to these sacred spaces together to pay homage. So we were just in Akompong for January 6th celebration, and after years of going to Akompong, I finally received the honor of going to Old Town. And just to see the ancestors being fed the traditional way, it was moving for me. It moved me greatly. And when I saw the crowd of people there around the feeding of the ancestors, I said, just like what we would say in Rio Grande Valley, conjure seed na last. And for those who know, conjure is the wild yam in the hills. And Colonel Sterling will be able to back me up there. They have the yam seed that eventually forms. That's the conjure seed that drops off, and that way the wild yam keeps on growing. And that is the representation, the simile, or the metaphor of our culture, that though it seems to have come down to nothing, we will be able to raise it up again. I mentioned our spirituality tying us to the land. Well, in particular, we have what we would consider two very sacred spaces in Jamaica. The Blue and Jankra Mountains in the east, where we're from, and the Cockpit Country, where our Western family are from. And what all Maroons will tell you is that there are particular spots, and Elder Carey said it earlier, that she had to track down this giant stone, this boulder, as it was considered to be a sacred spot. Also, within the leeward section, the western section in the Cockpit Country, the elders over there will tell you, and I spent a lot of time with them as the Minister of Foreign Affairs under Chief Corey's administration. They will tell you that there are several seal grounds. There are many seal grounds which are the sacred spots of reverence right throughout the Cockpit Country. And it was because of this I had suggested to Chief Corey when I was serving the people of Akompong that he should declare Cockpit Country sacred land. And I think that this is something that we should all look into as indigenous people. Yes, and yes, we did. Any space that there is pilgrimage to every year, just like Mecca, just like the Wailing Wall, just like all of these places, any space that pilgrimage takes place on a spiritual level is and should be considered holy land, sacred land, regardless of the religious persuasion. And it is only at the time that we start to recognize what our ancestors recognized, that the springs, the rivers, the rocks, the trees, all of these spaces are sacred, that we will really be able to protect our spaces, because the Jews have been mentioned extensively, and what they have relied on is the freedom of religion. And so I also make the call, and I hope that all Maroon leaders will support the abolition of the Obia Act, right, which is a very corrosive act that was put in place by the British, not in 1760 like it's always said, because I have been following Bev Carey's footsteps and gone deep into research. But the British outlawed our spiritual sciences from as early as the 1720s and the 1730s. And why was that? Because of our wonderful ancestors. Kojo, Nani, Kwao, all of these people who were using spirituality not just as a weapon, but as a means of unification. And finally, I'd like to speak to the treaty a bit. The treaties, as were understood by our ancestors, were not first writings on paper, but sacred blood oaths. We have found references, I think even John Guthrie said that I had to tie up myself in a sacred oath with the Negroes, right? A solemn oath, he said, solemn oath. And he said I had to tie up myself, which was speaking to the principle that we join the blood together. So one may wonder, why is it that our people have been defending this thing for so long? We'll never let it go, we'll never assimilate. It's because it is considered by our people to be sacred and an obligation on which blood was required. Because the problem had caused all of this bloodshed, and so just as how it began, it had to end with blood. And until the day that we realize as a people that all of this work that we're doing now is sacred work, is holy work, and respecting it as such, I don't think we'll ever get anywhere. So maybe with this unity and unification push that we're having now, there needs to be a spiritual dimension. And maybe the chiefs need to consider blood oaths, because if we could swear them with Bakra, we should be able to swear them with ourselves, that we will never ever again disunify, break apart, but we will stand together as one in this struggle and in any other struggle that we have going forward. Peace and love.
Well, we have heard from our four panelists. I don't think there's anything that we can disagree with. These have been some very important comments, historically based, those that have brought us into mind about our cultural manifestations and the implications, the importance of the Maroons in terms of Jamaica's own cultural identity. We heard about jerk. Sidney Barty talked about the music. And we are essentially establishing a sort of rubric to understand not only sacred spaces, but sacred herbs, sacred spiritual sciences, and of course, the sacred work that we are here as, speakers and distinguished guests today in conversation doing.